Texas, and it's not just Texas. It's not just Texas. It's 23 other states that is banning teachers from not talking about the 1618 project, 1619 project. Uh, they're banning teachers from talking about critical race theory. Um, and and the other part is if they're if they were to talk about these subjects, they have to be deferential on giving both sides of the argument. I
There's this article that talks about it, and I'm not gonna read it, but there's something I wanted to cite just so you understand the point of like, um, okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about what critical race theory is and all that, but there's this conversation. So in Alabama, Republican state rep Chris Kringle, um, he basically had this pre-filled of bill of his own ban teaching critical race theory in the state, and with a phone interview with a journalist, Pringle repeated the false notion. He said, like, basically, the journalist, like, okay, what is critical race theory? He said, it teaches that certain children are inherently bad because of the color of their skin. And when the journalist asked, could you cite any critical race scholars who are advancing that bogus version of the concept? He's at a loss. He's like, I can assure you. And they said, like, I'll have to read more, blah, 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 blah. And then there's also people out there that, like, um, eh, basically say that Pringle also falsely told him that critical race theory scholars, and this is real. There's people actually putting this stuff out there into the ether. Um,
okay, okay,
Pringle
okay,
said that
okay.
critical race theory scholars were putting white men into re-education camps. Yeah. When asked to provide evidence, Pringle mentioned an article he had read, but was unable to name a source or provide a link. So this.
Okay, okay. So, we're gonna call this the quick facts segment. Quick facts. um, quick facts. What is critical race theory? Webster defines critical race theory as is an academic movement and the civil rights scholars and activists who seek to critically explain the laws as it intersects with issues of race and to challenge mainstream liberal approaches to radical justice, to racial justice, not radical justice, but to racial justice. So it's looking at laws and how they intersect with the issues that that happen to certain races, or the issues that certain races have, looking at the laws and their impact and intentions and how they affect certain races, and looking at how can we change said laws to better positively affect said races.
Yep, and I
You
think
think that would be a
one thing I want to add too is like the trajectory of this. So critical race theory largely was kind of like this is something that you learn in law school if you were going to pursue anti-discrimination cases and stuff like that. And then it kind of leaked a little bit into the kind of trainings that certain like anti-racist nonprofits would put on. And then like it kind of follows this pattern of like when Republicans hear of something like that, they're motivated to like, oh my God, we need to take this, distort it as much as possible. And we've actually seen like there's evidence of like these think tanks that it's like what their real goal is to take the term critical race theory and make it so outlandish, so anathema to the typical Fox News watcher that they will be able to motivate people to basically fight to keep their children ignorant about real history.
I mean, I mean, why do you think they still teach in Texas schools, not just in Texas schools, but and again, that ban that's happening in Texas, in the reason why we're bringing it up because it happened in Texas. It's happening in 23 other states, and these are the same states that like that. These are the same states that also coincidentally are trying to pass laws that make it harder for minorities to vote. These are also the same these are also the same states that's been focusing on trans kids playing sports. Think about that. Think about that. We have we have a housing issue where Americans are losing their houses to BlackRock and Koch Industries, and that the eviction moratorium is going up, so Americans are losing housing. Americans are food insecure. Americans have been job insecure because of the pandemic. A wide margin of Americans have not been able to bounce back from the pandemic because or find a suitable, stable job because of the financial issue of how because of the pandemic, and uh the because the cost of living was already preposterous was already outrageous to begin with. But instead of focusing on any of those issues, what do? They start doing laws and start putting out legislation that negatively affects minorities, which is basically proving the point of what critical race theory would be teaching. Also, think about this in one other context. If you have to be deferential to an issue, which means you have to tell both sides of an issue, then that means you're allowing not just not just the denial that slavery happened in America. What if we were talking about the Native American genocide, and we're talking, or if we're talking about teaching the Holocaust? You're allowing the denial. You're allowing Holocaust denial. You're allowing genocide denial to be taught as a critical subject to students. So we're literally allowing for the lies of colonizers and racist, bigoted monsters to permeate and fester as actual thoughts and facts.
Well, I think it's important to point out too that while this does all kind of go into the overarching kind of culture wars nonsense that a lot of these Republicans are engaging in, there is something a little deeper going on here, and it's kind of like it's a backlash to the way, particularly young people, have been questioning a lot of our myths about American exceptionalism. Like, think about like the Texas thing. Their response to the 1619 project was like, we're going to ban the teaching of this curriculum, which again is just pointing at facts throughout history to talk about like America's troubled past with race, and we're going to replace it with like the 1863 project, which is basically them saying like, we want the Texas curriculum to focus on how awesome Texas is, and that is literally like them coming out and saying it's like, we only want students to learn good things about America. We don't want them to learn bad things about America, because if they learn about bad things, they'll start to question a lot of these narratives that we need in order to kind of keep America, together and homogenous, and honestly, kind of repeat a lot of these capitalist and imperialist pathologies. And it's like, I think it's a in a weird way, it's like a valid response from them, because kids are smart and they are questioning this stuff. We have the internet. The internet deserves a lot more credit, because I think people our age, millennials and younger, we were able to like go online and talk to people from around the world, and it's like, whoa, you guys actually have a healthcare system, or like, oh, I didn't know this happened in Tulsa 100 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. It's much easier to learn the truth about American history. And I see like this whole critical race theory things, like, yeah, it's tied to culture wars, but I think it's also like a backlash against that. Like, you see teenagers are reading about Marxism in Teen Vogue, like literally. And it feels to me like a lot of these reactionaries are panicking and they're saying it's like, what can we do to mess up the school system in order to prevent these kids from learning the truth? So if they learn the truth, they aren't going to be, good little, what, robots for American capitalism.
I'm glad you brought up, like, there's a lot of stuff that you said there, and I'm only gonna add this. Common, who's one of my favorite artists, when we were talking about it was a 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa massacre, right? And the survivors of that massacre still remember, was too afraid at times, were too afraid to talk about it because they thought that the government would do that again. Remember, it was a white mob that destroyed a city. They destroyed Black Wall Street. There's been multiple depictions of it. The most recent one that I remember watching of the Tulsa massacre was in Watchmen. If y'all watched that series, but that's not the only Black massacre that's happened in this country. There was a Black massacre that happened in Detroit in 1943. That happened in Chicago in 1919. These are massacres. These are massacres that my grandparents was alive for. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's been massacres all over our country from the 1800s, from 1860 all the way up till 1943, and most people don't know about it. They don't know about it because we don't teach it. And all the way up to what happened in Charleston. What happened in Charleston in 2015, right? So, like, we act as if not teaching not talking about these historical moments and not giving them their proper context will make us a better country. It won't. It will only it will only it only to helps to continue subjugation of our people. It will only continue to hurt our people. We can't fix something if we do not acknowledge something exists.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's not even necessarily a bug. I think that's a feature. Like,
Yeah.
there's a deliberate attempt here to like keep, and particularly keep like white children ignorant, like even, a lot of if you're not exposed to, if you live in a very like white small town or a monocultural environment and you're not exposed to any of these histories, you're going to assume that these kind of glorified Disneyland versions of American history are the correct ones, and you're going to see things like BLM protests or people talking about the history of racism in America, and your response is going to be like, that's not what I was taught. Why are these people lying? Why are these people lying about our good history? And it's goes back, it stretches back such a long time, but I really like a big part of it is keeping this kind of like fracture the solidarity to make sure that the young generation coming up does not have the same base level of knowledge, and to keep those divisions going, because again, the power structure hates it when people get together and they have common cause, and they do not want that to happen. Better for all the little white children to think Thanksgiving was magic, and we all just decided to stop doing slavery one day because we thought it was a good idea, and Martin Luther King ended racism on a certain date, 1960 something. Like it.
Yeah, he ended slavery on the day he got assassinated, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Think about that, and this also goes back to I'm glad you was talking about this. Goes back to us organizing, and I mean, I actually, the thing that I posted, the thing that Common posted, which was it was a map of the United States, and it just showed a brief history of all the black massacres that's happened in this country. One of them that I didn't even know about, and this happened in 1985. This happened 3 years before I was born,
Dang.
right? The Move House, a Black Liberation Group in Philadelphia, was
Oh.
bombed.
Mhm.
It were bombed by local officials.
Yep, I do remember that.
Like,
That's a pretty famous story. The move folks basically got firebombed by the Philadelphia police and ended up setting fire to like a big chunk of the neighborhood and
yeah,
killing
11,
several.
11 people died, including 5 children. Over 250 citizens was left homeless after the bombing. They literally bombed a city block.
Yeah, there's actually, I don't know if
They
you've heard about this.
C4'd,
There's
they
there's a recent
C4'd a city block.
there's a recent controversy about that, and like again, this does tie into like how America views its own history, but like one of the children's remains from the move bombing was used at it was a university either outside near, I think it was Princeton, but
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they were using like basically a black child's corpse to like teach medical studies and like autopsy and stuff. And there was like this total disconnect between like the white people running this university and like the descendants of those people who were murdered by the state. Say, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to use a victim of racist state violence to teach people about the human body. That's messed up. And like this happened literally just a couple months ago.
Yeah. And again, the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because when we think about Charlottesville, when we think about the storming of the Capitol, right? To bring it into immediate modern times, that was a small group of people who were there was that was a large mass of people that was shouting "Hang Mike Pence." They wanted to kill. Uh, they were shouting and talking about assassinating our our local representatives, right? Our federal representatives. What do you think would have happened if they actually caught up to Mike Pence or AOC? What do you think? How fast do you think our media, Republicans, the Republican representatives, how fast do you think that they would have tried to brush it aside and downplay it the way that they did? Remember, 2 officers got killed. I think 5 other people. I think 3 other people got killed as well. One of them got shot by Capitol Police. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, these massacres happened, and those massacres took place because the state did not move in to protect. The state allowed it to. The state allowed them to happen. Tulsa happened because a white mob wanted to burn down a town. They attacked that town for 3 days. The local officials didn't do anything. The local officials okayed it. So this is why I'm trying to. That's why we're talking about it. That yes, when we are denying or when we are downplaying, when we are not giving facts about our history, when we are lying about our history, when we are trying to both sides tragedy, then we are giving the bigots and racists who are in power, we're giving them legitimacy, and we're continuing to let them get away with these atrocities that they will do to us.
Yeah, oof, 100%. I feel everything you said there. Yeah, oof. And again, this is something we're gonna keep grappling with over the next few years, because like again, the reactionary forces in this country are only getting more rabid, and you know, as somebody like, you know, I'm kind of like just a self-taught scholar and stuff. It is critical that people know the truth about this stuff, because you know, you frankly, like, you know, when we actually dig down to the truth of how stuff has really happened, it's illuminating, and it can also be instructive. You know, the struggles of the past can inform how best we can struggle into the future right now. So,
I mean, again, to add to that, and I'm sorry for interrupting,
oh
but
no,
you
I was
know,
done.
oh yeah, but like, there's a book called White Violence and Black Response, from Reconstruction to from Reconstruction to Montgomery. It's by Herbert Shapiro. It is a book that literally talks about how our how white violence, white mobs, like in Charlottesville, like in the Capitol, how back in the day, how lynchings and violence against minorities would happen, how the cops would be inept in not finding those people, and if they do find those people, how the judges and jury would literally ignore the evidence of the violence that happened, and how we need to respond to it, and how we have pissed, how Black people have historically responded to it, and how we can respond to it in the future. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, and I want to bring up that book because we always talk about how we're like, we both read a lot. We're just self-taught. We're self-taught scholars. I like that framing. But I wanted to bring that up because there was a story that I wanted to talk about that was a quick hit. That would have been another quick hit that is tied to, you know, this white violence and this unaccountable, this just disgusting behavior, and that we have to fight back against. Did you see Laura Trump on Fox News and what
no,
she said about immigrants on the border?
man, Morris, you have such a bigger stomach for a lot of that. Like, I know, like, part of our job got to like critique the mainstream media, and like, I don't know, I'm easier like I'll critique like newspapers and stuff, but like the
But
cable news networks, man, it gives me like
but
just a migraine.
let me I can tell you, look, the only reason why I catch it is because I work out. Like when I'm working out, I need motivation to piss me off.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah, good thinking.
so
Yeah, modern
so
problems.
so right, by the problems, right? So I'll watch mainstream media. Even though like we critique mainstream media a lot. So, you know, to critique mainstream media, you have to watch mainstream media.
Mhm.
Laura Trump was on Fox News, and Laura Trump she said this on Fox News, and they were talking about the border. She said, and I quote, that I don't know what people at the border needs to do. They they may have to arm up. They may have to arm up, get guns, and start taking matters into their own hands.
Jesus.
Let me remind you, this is Trump's daughter. This is I think this is Trump's daughter, cousin. I don't know who it is. But she said for people who are at the southern border to arm up and take matters into their own hands when it comes to when it comes to migrants crossing the border. Okay, there's a thing called stochastic terrorism that we've talked about a lot on this show. I'm not going to repeat it right now because we've talked about it a lot on this show. When you are advocating for people to be violent against another group of people, when you're advocating for violence, just like how the Proud Boys advocated for violence and other things of that nature, it's called stochastic terrorism when you are uh, egging on people to commit violent acts for political means. That's what Donald Trump did. That's what Matt Gaetz did. That's what Gavin McInnes does.
And it's like, it's really disturbing because it's like, that was like that directly resulted in there was a mass shooting down in uh oh, crap, it was a border town in Texas, pretty big.
No, there was the mass shooting happened at a Walmart in Texas. I know,
In El
and
Paso.
it was
Yeah.
El Paso,
Yeah.
and the shooter said that he was inspired by Candace Owens and Donald Trump in that right wing rhetoric of migrants coming to hurt Americans. Can you
And again,
imagine? Now,
how
can you
like
imagine if that was Nina Turner, or if that was Tamika Mallory? Can you imagine if that was Minister Louis Farrakhan that said, "I don't know what Black folks need to do in this country. We may need to arm up and defend ourselves when the cops come." Can you imagine that? And the reaction that you would get from mainstream Americans, they would be terrified. This is a Trump telling Americans to arm themselves because people who are fleeing violent situations, who are trying to come to this country for a better life, that you need to be scared of those people. You may need to shoot them.
And just to circle it back into what we were just talking about, this type of stochastic violence is based, it can really only be flourish in an environment where white people are deliberately miseducated. So they are given false crime statistics about migrants. They are told,
Facts.
they are given like false reports on like the criminal nature of them. They're told about like groups like MS-13 without being explained that like MS-13 was a direct result of people who had to flee a country that was like, overthrown because of U.S. imperialism. And again, MS-13 started in Los Angeles. Or, again, not even learning like why are those migrants coming up in the first place? And 9 times out of 10, if migrants are coming from Latin America, it's because America in some way, shape, or form destabilized the government that they're coming up from. So, again, all of this
Facts.
relies on white ignorance and white hate, which again, they're trying to facilitate through our school system with all these bills.
Facts. 100% facts. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Like, I not even trying to add anything else to it. I think that that's 100% true, and it goes back to why when we see, and I also want to go back, and this also goes back to the failure of the media, and this is why we go back to the failure of the media. Think about how much you heard about Ilhan Omar when she recently said that America commits atrocities just like everybody else. Think about the backlash that she got, right?
Yeah. And let's not forget, like that is an objectively true statement. Like what she said, like it's true.
Like, like every and the reason why I want to bring it up because you saw it on the Hill. Ryan Grimm, who I think is the editor in chief of the Hill. He was hosting the Hill TV show since the Hill kicked Sagar and Crystal off. Like that's a whole nother story as well. But Ryan was talking to his coworker, and the female co-host was a right-wing commentator from the Federalist, and they were talking about Ilhan Omar's statement, and Ryan was just dropping basic facts about, like, yeah, America foreign policy. If you look at everything since World War II, which was Americans helping Nazis escape justice, and then helping Nazis to fight to go and implant themselves in the Soviet Union and to destabilize the Soviet Union, to help destabilize Central America, to what America's done in the Congo and Africa, especially how we've destabilized democratically elected countries in the Middle East. We have committed multiple atrocities. Helping fund death squads in Central America and things of that nature. Brian's just dropping facts after facts after facts, talking about how, yeah, America did help. America did help fund the Taliban and things of that nature. Right? These are basic facts that you can Google and you can Google and that you should have already learned when it comes to just your grade school education. He's dropping these facts, and this right-wing co-host is just flummoxed. She's just outraged that he would even say that, or that he would agree with Ilhan Omar. And he's like, no, she's absolutely right. America's committed multiple atrocities. We help commit atrocities. We support 73% of the world's dictators. Like, we are not above international scrutiny, and we shouldn't be above international law. We have to be held accountable just like everybody else.
And that's what I said. It's like when you conflict with like a conservative's Disneyland version of American history, they're either just like flummoxed, shocked, or they deny, because like there's absolutely no way those things could be true, because America, we're the good guys. How could we possibly
and
bad?
The truth sounds like hate. The people who hate the truth. So when you hear Laura say that that people at the border should grab guns and take matters into their own hands, that vigilante style justice on the border, that's that when Trump said stand back and stand by, when he was talking to the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, that's what that garbage looks like. That's what that violence looks like. That the Capitol is what that looks like. Right? The Capitol assault is what that looks like.
Yep.
She should be scrutinized by our media the same way they went after Ilhan Omar. But have you heard anything about it?
Nope.
Did you hear anything about what Laura?
She gets a pass for like potentially getting like innocent people killed, but like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Ilhan gets dogpiled by everybody for pointing out that, hey, America's done some bad stuff.
that America's done bad stuff, and that we shouldn't be above international law. Yeah. We should be held accountable like everyone else.
Something that's also worth pointing out, and I didn't know this. Apparently, there's a Democratic representative so I believe Ilhan's congressional district is like Minneapolis and stuff, and across the river, St. Paul, their representative is a white woman who's been in there for the last 20 years, and her politics are apparently super similar to Ilhan's. She has the same stances on things like Israel, but you notice like that person doesn't get like vilified in the media. It's almost like, you know, what's different about Ilhan?
Ilhan is Ilhan's, because the difference with Ilhan is that outside of that, she's a Muslim brown skinned woman. And she is that's a fact. You know, she's a fantastic brown skinned woman that just happens to be Muslim, telling the truth. She's also has been vilified by the right wing egosphere, by mainstream media. They have made money off of the vilification of that woman and aggressively going after that woman for telling the truth.
No consequences too. I think she was just I think she did like a TikTok or something where she was just like going over like through a stack of death threats, just you know, and you know, bless her for being like such a bad A, and like, you know, like just, you know, it's like just pushing through, but like, you know, this stuff has consequences, like real consequences, real people. And
yeah.